as I mentioned. So we're going to try to go for about between 30 minutes to an hour today, next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, all at the same time. And today's session is basically going to be, this is going to be great for sales as well. It's going to be just a review of, why people need custom tables, how we install it, how we create some of the fields, and things like that. Next week, we're going to talk about creating the layouts and things like that. And then depending on timing of next week, either do the importing of data next week or do that the following week. Okay, so that's sort of our 3-part series here. So once again, this week we're just going to get comfortable with the program itself, and also how to what kind of people or clients we think would be best suited with tables. Okay, that's a main question I think we get all the time, especially from either other KPPs and or our sales team themselves. Okay, Tony Hollowitz, are you on the call?
I'm on the call.
Okay, great, Tony. Just want to make sure you're here today.
Michael, can you record this so we can review it later?
Absolutely. Already recording this, but yep.
Cool.
I am. Yep. Okay. And if anybody wants it, I'll post it and send a link out to everybody after the session later today once I have it uploaded. So you guys just want to sort of put it on the back burner somewhere. We'll have it there. Okay. So the first thing I want to show you guys is a couple of tabs of clients of ours where either I've created a custom table from them, or they're a current client who I'm sort of trying to push towards custom tables because I think it'd be beneficial for them. Okay, so this first one we're looking at here, let me see if I can play this slideshow. It might be a little easier to see here. Okay, that might be a little easier to see for everybody. So this first one is the client of ours is At Home Radon. For any of, I'm not sure who, I think somebody has worked with these guys, maybe Matt. But they basically do radon service for their clients. And what they used to do, they had this tab here, radon service, where they would, as you see here, put in the data service, the type of service, and all this information below. Now, what would happen is, because many times their clients are going to have multiple visits. Okay, it's not just a one-time thing and they're done. They're going to have multiple visits. So what they would do is, let's say they went to visit today. So their data service was, February 6, 2018. They put in all the other information about today and went on their business. Then they had another visit 6 months from now, in August. They would delete all this data and do a new one, and so on and so on. So basically, all they really had was their most recent date of service. Well, that's not very good if you want to have a historical period of what they've done, because how do they know how many times they visited them? How do they know, who the specialist was on the 3 visits ago, or when they visited 3 visits ago, or what the price was, or the payment terms, or anything like that? So we introduced the custom tables for them, and they love it now. So now they have a history of all their service visits with their clients that they've done with them. And it was really nice and easy to build for them. So this is a really good example. So this is a sort of a service one. This is any type of service. And specifically for us internally, this is similar to what we use. So we use one for our service items. Our support and service are tied together. So anytime we do a web meeting with a client, a training, anything like that, we create a service item on our service table that's linked to a support item on the support table. Okay, so this is going to be great for any clients who provide some type of service to their clients. Repair people, so appliance repair people, car repair people, anything like that. This is great for that type of industry. Okay, so the next one. This one is one of our insurance clients. Allied Insurance Brokers are out of Pennsylvania. Eric, you might be familiar with them because they were designer one client at one point, and Jason as well. So this is what they call their it's called their NB sheet, new business sheet. And these people have not gone to custom tables yet because I think they're actually going to Salesforce, but I've been trying to give them the tables for a while now. Because you see here, they have, I think this isn't even their whole sheet. I think they actually have 50 line items here. So this can get sort of cumbersome because if you want to do a query on anything, you almost have to include all of them to get the data that you want out of that query or any kind of report. So this is a great one where they track, the market and brokers and the dates, the expiration dates of certain things. So basically, this would translate into a table very nicely. Each of those line items would be a field in the table, And then you wouldn't have these 50, actually 50 times what, how many columns they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's like actually 450 fields on this one tab alone, okay? So not only is it taking up valuable real estate on the actual Act layout page, but it's also tough for queries, as I mentioned, in reports. And then lastly, this actually is really bloating the size of your database, okay? If you have 450 fields, even if they might not have data in them necessarily, it's still bloating the size of your database, and it could cause other issues as well, like slow opening, issues on if they're using Act for Web, because then they can't create new fields. As we know, I'm sure we've won the clients where if you have over a bunch of fields, you can't create fields via the web interface, okay? So it brings in a whole bunch of other problems when you have this many fields in your Act database. Whereas if we just had a custom table here, all they would really have would be 9 fields, those 9 columns, and then each contact that you go to might have 0 data there, or they may have 10 items, 20 items, 30, whatever. It's unlimited there, okay? So this is another great item for a custom table. This is the same client. This is their cross-sale info, okay? So this one has a little less. It only has, what do we have here, 8 line items and 6 columns, okay? But another great example of having the ability to have these line items within a custom table. And finally here, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of them. I just did like 4 screenshots just to give you an example of a couple different industries. This is another insurance client of ours, Insurance Exchange Navigators. Jamie, I think you're working with them. Yes.
The view isn't changing as you change.
It's changing.
Okay, now it is.
Okay, maybe just on a delay. Thanks. I think James Young, I think you've been working with these guys recently, getting them to, they're separating their databases out. But this is their insurance tab where they track their carriers and their renewal dates for the different types of insurance. And I think one of the first I've been trying to get Frank to do is change this over to a custom table. Because you see here, they have all these columns and all these rows where they wouldn't need to have all that. They would basically have 10 to 12 fields in that custom table to create that insurance tab and then the insurance table for them to do and research. And then they could just go to our global list, sort of like we go to our global service list or our global HHC list, and then see everything there, and then filter out by renewal date, by carrier, plan type, effective date, whatever they want to filter by, okay? So that's another item they can do from there. Anybody have any questions on either the 4 we've shown, or maybe somebody they have in mind that they have questions whether they should go to custom tables or not? Anybody have questions about that? Tony, I know you had some questions prior to this about certain clients of yours. They were not sure about custom tables or not. Do you have any questions on this? Does this make it a little more clear? Still there, Tony? Okay, we might have lost Tony. Or Tony, if you're on mute, we can't hear you. If you're on the call still. Okay. All right, we're going to move on here. So the next thing I want to show everybody is we're going to go walk through the install process of it. So those people who have not installed it yet. So you need to have Act closed. Download the tables installer from our website. I'm sure everybody knows how to do that. You go to our website, go to the tables page, and there's a download link there. And then once you download it, it goes into your downloads folder. I just copied it to the desktop for easy retrieval here. And you just double click on it to install it. If they have their user account control on, hit yes to approve it. It's a pretty easy install. You choose your language, so you either have English or Francais. And you hit OK. And then it's a couple next. And then you don't change anything here. Leave all the defaults as they are. Click install here. The only thing you might change here is if sometimes if a client, if they say, we do all our installs on our D drive or on our E drive for whatever purpose, because they like to keep their C drive small, this would really be the only change you need to do here. So you just change that accordingly to whatever the IT folks navigate you to. But typically, 95% of the time, probably you're not going to change this. Then you let it go through its install. Once the install is finished, there'll be a finished item here. And then Act for Work Updater should open up automatically, I believe, to check for updates. There it goes. And if there are any updates, it'll let us know. Okay, so it also checked my Act for Outlook. I'm not going to update that just yet. I don't need that for what we're doing today, so I'm going to uncheck that. But tables, this is great too. I'm sure you guys have seen this, but if not, it lists the features of what's been updated since your last update down here. Okay, so if I'm not sure if everybody's installed the new update that Austin did this weekend, but the grid view has been optimized and a lot more speed has been added. There's a feature with that automatically adds the company and contact columns. You just hit the button and it adds them both simultaneously to your view, which is real nice, especially in the global list views where you want to see who the contact and or company is for those items. And you just hit next here and then it does the updating for you. Sales team, any questions so far as far as what we're doing here? Because a lot of this stuff here will be more for support. But I mean, if you guys want to hang on the call, that's fine, just to see sort of how the program works and everything. But the first part there that we covered was sort of how to gauge, what kind of customers would need this program. Basically, if you see their layout and they have any kind of a almost it looks like a grid where they have multiple columns in multiple rows with sort of similar fields, that's going to be a candidate for custom tables for Tables4Act.
Loves, I would say anybody who does anything more than once for a client to record that information is a candidate for tables.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great point, James. Yeah, anybody, exactly. Anybody who does a service of some sort or tracks something for a client more than, like you said, more than once is going to be a great candidate. That's a great way to put it. Okay, so that update's taking place. Let's go ahead and open up Act.
Michael, can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Tony.
This is Tony. So I had to step away from the phone for just a minute or
no problem.
But the question I have is because I have a little bit of experience with this, why are there not all kinds of schemas available to us that have already been developed so we don't have to do everything from scratch? And I don't know if I might have missed that, or if that's going to be part of the product, or if it's going to be available to us as partners, or for example, if it's something as simple as a project management schema or just something simple for us to work with, or at least to be able to see and view. Are they going to be available?
They will be. I believe we're going to have there's going to be a library once 20.1 comes out. Right now, because this program is somewhat in its infancy. We've been using it internally for over a year now, but as far as getting clients to sort of buy into it, it's somewhat, I would say, in its infancy. So we don't really have a lot of schemas built in. A lot of schemas we've done, or at least that I've done anyway, have been more custom built to people. So they really don't. They're not like just sort of a generic. Oh, here, this is an insurance one, or this is a project one. They're sort of like custom to what these people do. With that being said, as far as project management goes, we have Projects4Act. So that has its own schema. So if you go to our app page, you can download the trial for that, and that will install schemas for projects to manage. I could send you the link after the meeting if you want to take a look at that. Yeah, if you're looking for something for project specific. But yeah, and if you're ever working on something, Tony, feel free to Slack or email me and just ask if, hey, I have this insurance customer, or I have this service customer. I can always email you either a schema to start with, or just some ideas as far as sort of where to get started, or screenshots for them to look at to get an idea of what they're going to see on their end.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
But
great.
I think down the road, that is definitely our goal, to have some sort of a library of sorts, to say, hey, okay, this is, here's a commercial real estate, here's a residential real estate, here's a insurance broker, and so on down the line. So just to at least start out with. Obviously, each company might have their own sort of custom built things that they want to incorporate with it, but at least something to start with. Because the nice thing is, and we'll sort of go into this again next week when we do some of the importing of schemas, what you can do when you import a schema, let's say you already had an insurance custom table in there, but you wanted to import another schema because it had things you didn't have necessarily already. When you import that schema, it doesn't really overwrite anything you have. It just adds on to it. So if your schema had 10 fields, but the schema you're importing has 20, and 10 of those were the same, it says, oh, okay, I see you have the same field, so I'm not going to change that. But these other 10 fields you don't have those, so I'm going to add those to your database for you. And then it imports those 10 new fields on top of the 10 you already had. So that's really the nice thing with the schema.
So does it go based on the field name or the type of field or both?
Field name, the field name, yeah. Yep. And we'll, like I said, we'll cover more of that. We'll go more in depth into that next week.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, you know what? Let me make one other comment. Can we compile a list of the kinds of schemas that have been done? I mean, and I'll start that list because, if, for example, you mentioned commercial real estate, and just if you've done that already or someone's done it, that'd be a great place to start, just so we know what's out there and possibly available.
Yeah, I'm actually just working on that one right now as we speak, actually, for a client, a commercial real estate one.
Excellent.
So it's not even totally finished yet. Yeah, okay. Sort of in the project or in the.
So I'll reach back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Are we going to be keeping a copy of the schemas that we make for people?
I have been, yeah. So what we would do is if you make one, so support team, if you do make one for a client, and especially if they're a hosting client, put it in their folder on their server under the Act data, and then whatever their let's just call it IN, yeah, their custom folder, and then create a folder in there called custom tables or Tables4Act, something related to custom tables, and then just put the schema in there. That's what we've been doing with some of the ones we've been creating. This way it does a couple of things. It allows us to either reuse that for somebody else if they're in the same industry, and then secondly, if for some reason they blow theirs up, we have a backup of sort of the original that we can go from.
How large are the schema files?
How large?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that right here. They're relatively small. It's basically just an XML file. It's like a text file, basically. That's all it really is. So
they're like KB.
Would it not be a good idea to attach it to their contact record, to have it embedded in our database, so we can pull
we can
from
even
there
do that too as well.
On the server?
Yeah, we could attach it to the company record as well. That would be a good idea. Yep. Okay. All right, so once you install it, you're going to see a menu up top here called Custom Tables, okay? In this database here I've used this as a demo before, so you already see sort of two custom tables already here, vehicles and maintenance, okay? So that's why you see those custom tables here. Then you'll also see tabs, or on the navigation bar on the left, you'll see like the global items there as well. So vehicles, if I go there, it's going to show me a list of all the vehicles. And then maintenance, it'll show me a list of all the maintenance items. Let me just open one up. So what I actually did here with these two, these are a vehicle. This vehicle is the parent table to the maintenance one. Okay, so it's basically just tracking the vehicles, the type, the model, the maintenance records. So that's the child table, is the maintenance records. Then it just has any of the record details, who it's listed to. Okay. And then the maintenance will show you the service that was done on that particular vehicle. Okay. So I want to get into how we actually create the table and then create a couple fields here. So I'm going to use that insurance as my model. I'm going to show you just real quick what we'll use here. So I'm going to use this tab here as sort of my model of the field I'm going to create for this custom table, just so we have a visual, what we see in Act right now, and then what we're going to see when we create the actual table. So under the custom tables menu, Before we actually go into there, let me just sort of go over the menu items here that are the options. So we're actually going to go into Manage Custom Tables in a second here to create those fields in a table. But before we do that, let me let you know what these other items do. So we have data import, and we're going to cover that either next week or the week after. And this is not importing the schema. This is importing actual data. Okay, so once we have the table and the fields in place, they may have the data either in ACT itself or in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, or SQL or CSV, whatever. So if they have it in Excel and or like a CSV file somewhere, we would use the first option there, which is importing from a spreadsheet. Okay. If they have it in ACT already, like some of our clients did, such as the one I showed you with the current group insurance, then we would select migrate from contacts. Okay. Now the migrate from contacts, what you have to do there, how many ever columns you have, how many ever rows you have, that's how many times you have to do the import, because each of those rows is a record in ACT. So if they have 20 rows, you have to do 20 imports. You import the row 1, those fields first, then row 2, then row 3, then row 4, etc. And once again, we're going to go over that next week. We'll get into more detail with that. We'll show you how that's done. Okay, but it's really nice because the data's in ACT already, so you just import it into these custom tables for ourselves. Manage templates, which we'll get into next week, is creating the templates for if you want to do any kind of mail merges. The template editor is the same as the one we used for ACT for support, which is the same that we use for Notifier, the one that Austin built. So if you've used any of those already, you're way ahead of the game. There's really no difference here. Obviously, the only difference is you're going to be merging you have the ability to merge the custom table fields, okay? Which actually had the ability to do that in ACT for support too, so there's actually really no difference here. Reload schema. This you'll have to do whenever you do that. This was an issue basically with any kind of custom tables tab, because if you remember back to Top-Line Designer days, for those of you who have created Top-Line Designer layouts, if you ever went to create or modify the actual ACT layout itself, like the contact layout screen, and then went back into ACT, if you ever notice, your labels would disappear. Your custom table tabs would disappear, or they would like triplicate. They were duplicate in size, or not size, but just you would have multiple custom table tabs. It's just an issue because of the tables, the way ACT displays the tables. So what you need to do is go into custom tables, hit reload schema, it refreshes everything, and then your tabs go back to how they should. Okay. So if there's ever a time where you don't see the custom tabs, or a client doesn't see them, the first thing you always do is custom tables, reload schema, and then they should see them. Okay. Apply theme. This allows you to change sort of the theme of how things look. So let's just do, let me show you the dark theme. Okay, so that's sort of that theme. I think Sylvia likes that, if I'm not mistaken from her screenshot. She likes that dark theme. Here's a green theme. Silver. You can play with all these. I mean, they're all different. Caramel. I like the classic one myself. This one sort of is the best, but in my opinion, that's just a personal preference, and everybody can have a different theme. The themes don't sync, so if there's 10 users in at a client site, they can all use different types of themes there. Okay. And then finally, about, and this just tells you the version that they're on. They can register from here, or they can delete a license. Okay. This is important too. So for any, I'm not sure if the salespeople are aware of this either, or some support people. If a person's moving from one computer to another, so let's say they have a laptop and they're getting rid of it, and then they're getting a new laptop. As you know, our programs are all sold computer-specific license-wise. Well, once they register that computer, it's hard-coded to that computer name. So if they get a new computer and they don't use the same computer name, when they try to register, it's going to give them an error message saying that this has already been registered to whatever that old computer name was. So to get around that, we can either deactivate that old one on our side with the licensing server, which is not really a pain, but just takes a little bit of time. But they can be proactive here, and before they decommission that old laptop or old computer, they can delete the license, which sort of frees it from that computer, and then install it on the new computer without any interaction from us. So if sales folks, if you're talking to people, or even support folks, if you're talking to anybody and they're changing computers, if they still have that old computer active before it crashes or decommissions, have them delete their licenses, and then they'll be able to activate on their new ones moving forward. Okay, and that's the latest version, 1.46. Okay, all right, so let's get into creating the table itself. So it's under the Custom Tables tab, and then Manage Custom Tables. And the question was just asked, is there a limit of the tabs that you can create, number of tables? No, there's no limit, okay? You can create as many tabs as you want. They'll just, we have in our database, I don't know how many we have, I can't keep track now, 8, I think, or 7. So there's no limit to amount of tabs that you can, tabs and or tables that you can create within the ACT database. Now for this, you do need to be in the master database. So if you're working with anybody who has remotes, this cannot be done in a remote database. So as a matter of fact, on their custom tables tab in the remote database, the manage custom tables will not even be an option. So it just won't be there. So if you ever, as a support folks, if you're working in a database and you go to that custom tables menu and you don't see manage custom tables, that means that you're working in a remote database and not the master. Okay, so all this stuff here needs to be done in the master. Now, the one nice thing about this is that you can actually create the tables in your own database or a demo database off-site, and then just do the export schema, import schema to the client database. So if you're having trouble getting hooked up with them with a web meeting or something, you can always do it on your computer, and then just export and import the schema. Okay. All right. So the first line of business is we need to create the table before we create the fields. So create table is up there in the top left. Click that. And then we give the table a name. So let's call this one insurance. The display name is what's going to be on the actual tab. Okay, so that can be, if you want that maybe to be something different, you can just change it there. You can have a logo. So this is the logo that's going to show up. If you look over here in the nav bar where vehicles and maintenance are, that's the logo that's going to show up there. I think it's like 32 by 32 is probably the best resolution if you can get something in there, if you want to have some sort of a logo there. Additional settings, unless the client gives you specifics here, is they just want it in a certain tab. I usually check all 4 of these, or I'm sorry, all 5, because invariably, after a while of using it, they're like, you know what, can we have it linked to the opportunities as well? You can't do this after the fact, okay? So it's always best to do everything here. And then later on, if you don't need it, then you just hide the tabs within this particular section, because you can't go in here and check these again after the fact if you've unchecked them. Obviously, you can recreate the table, but you don't usually want to do that either.
Will that cause any degradation in them using their database?
Not that I know of. I've not heard of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then same thing here. Okay, we do note that in most cases, only linking to the contacts and companies will be sufficient, because more times than not, it is. But as also noted here, once the table is saved, we won't be able to modify these settings. So that's why it's, in my opinion, anyways, I usually just link it to everything, because once again, if clients are going to come down after the fact, hey, I want to link this to the groups, something like that. So, and it just lets you know, okay, all this necessary information has been collected. Press the next to lock the database and edit this table. Next. So if you are working on the client database itself, I would suggest doing a backup prior to this. It works for a couple of reasons. Number one, in case something should go wrong, you have a backup. And number two, if the client thinks something went wrong after the fact, even though nothing really did go wrong, they're blaming us for something, we can restore that backup and say, hey, look, that issue was in the database prior to us creating this table, so we're not at fault for that. So it saves our backs in case there's an issue that pops up that maybe they just weren't aware of prior to this happening. And it's just a good rule of thumb anytime you're doing any kind of field changing to do this. So this is probably the longest process within or longest part of this whole process is we're creating this table here. Behind the scenes, it's creating all the tables and the links and all that stuff. Okay. So then once this table is created, then we're going to go to and create the fields. Now, what I have noticed is when we do this, I don't know how Austin did this, but when we create these tables, you don't have to be logged out of the database. Okay. Other users don't have to be logged out like you do when you define fields in ACT. Now, with that being said, I would typically recommend that they are, only just because, like I said, we want to do a backup beforehand. We want to make sure the data is backed up and safe, and people aren't adding to the database in case something should go wrong when we're doing this.
Hey, Michael,
Okay.
I noticed on
So
your
yeah.
I noticed on your create table section, the ability to duplicate a table has been removed. Do you know why? Because there used to be in the previous version I've got on my machine, there was a duplicate table, so you could literally just take an entire table that you've created if you wanted to create something new with similar fields. It used to have a duplicate table, and I'm not sure if that was an accident or if it was on purpose.
Okay, let me check with Austin.
Okay. And the other question I have for you, and as this message is up on your screen here,
yeah.
Why does this message come up now when you only have 4 fields or 5 fields?
So yeah, so this comes up in case what I've been told from Austin was in case you forget to do it after the fact. And I asked him the same thing because I said this should come up when you click OK to accept everything once you create your field. But I guess something happened where I guess you can't do that or something, or because once you hit OK, it's taking you out of that section. So so that's why this comes up. So basically, what this is telling everybody is that we've added the new table. One of the biggest, I guess, mistakes or oversight that people will do is they'll add the fields, but they won't add any fields to their list view. So then when they go to that custom table, the tab, I should say, within ACT, it's just blank because there's no columns there. Even though there may be data in there because you imported data, they don't see it because there's no tabs. I'm sorry, there's no fields listed. So this is where you have to design the layouts. I'm not the actual layout, but the column listing. So I'm just going to hit yes to show you what this will do. So similar to any contact list, any list view in ACT, you need to have columns there to view them. Okay, so let's just throw a couple. I'm going to leave this. Actually, I'm going to leave this blank for now to show you what happens here. So we're just going to hit cancel here. Hit close. Just going to take me back to my contact session. Oh, I just heard back from Austin James on that. It wasn't fully implemented. It would create the table, but not the field. So obviously that wasn't working very well. So you can get around that though, James, by exporting the schema and then importing it to duplicate the. Well, actually, going to create the same name though. That's not going to work. Okay, so I think it sounds like it's a work in progress. Okay, so as I mentioned now, there's no column headings here. Okay, so if I were to import any data, the data would be there, but I wouldn't see any of it because it's going to be blank like this. So if a client ever calls in, maybe they've done the install themselves, or maybe we did and just forgot to do it. If they call in and say, hey, I don't see any of the column headings there, it's as simple as clicking the custom columns button to the right here, and then adding whatever columns they want to see. And then that will put the columns there. And then if they had any data, obviously, they would see the data below there. Okay. So let's go back into there. Okay, so here's our table. And as you see, these are the 6 fields that get created by default with any new table. So you have create date, edit date, last edited by, whether it's private, which is a checkbox, record creator, and record manager. Okay, so those are 6 fields that always get created every time we create a table. So the next thing we want to do is to create the field, create the different fields. So we're going to click the create field button. If you are a keyboard user like myself sometimes, I don't like to use the mouse all the time. If you want, you have to tab twice to get your cursor into the field name field. Okay, so in case you're a keyboard person and we're wondering that, that's how you get into there. Or you can just click into the field name to start typing it. Okay, so let's do type. Okay, and then we had the different field types, just like we have in ACT here. Okay, so you have basically all the same ones there with a couple additional ones. So you have progress is an additional one that's not in ACT. And progress is that little progress bar. So this is great for, we use it in our projects tab. If you want to say something's 50% of the way, it's just a progress bar that goes across your screen that shows you 50%. Or, 73% goes over 73%. Okay. There's one more, I think, that's not in. Oh, activity. So you can link this to an activity. Okay. You can link, much like for those support us internally, we have on our ACT support tab, on our service tab, if we open up a service item, there's an option for an activity. It's going to be linked to an existing activity for you. That's how you would do that. Okay. You can also, one other thing you do is link it. So you have the ability to link a custom table item to a contact and or company. Okay. This is different than adding it to a contacts record. This links it back to an actual contact in your database. Let's say you're doing property management and you want to show who the owner of that property is, or maybe the property manager, I should say, because the owner is probably going to be the contact that it's on. You want to show the property manager. As long as that property manager is in your ACT database, you can link it back to that property manager so that you don't have to type in the person's name. You just hit the button for link, and then you look it up within the contact section.
Can this do calculated fields?
It does, but it's custom programming. So it's not like the ACT contact fields where you just say, okay, add this field plus this field. It's custom programming that Austin or Ferber or somebody who knows, I think it's in C+, would need to know that coding to do that. I think down the road, we're going to try to make it easier for the end user, similar to how ACT has it. But for the time being, any kind of calculations are custom programming. So this is just going to be a type field. This is just indicating whether it's like medical or life or retirement. So I'm going to use a drop-down list. And you can create a new drop-down right from here. So if you already created them, you just select from your list here. But if you don't have it created yet, you can create one. If you want to allow them to edit it, you can do that. I'm just going to add a few here. I'm not going to add them all just for time's sake. Medical, life, dental. Okay, there's a couple in there. And whenever you manage the drop downs here, as you notice, the home button is grayed out. Okay, if you do it through custom tables, because what happens is if you were to, what I was told by Austin, if that was enabled, it would take you back to the tools define field section of ACT that's not part of the table. So that's why it's grayed out. You just hit the X box here up top right, and it's going to save everything you've done. And it just takes you back to where you were. I'm going to do insurance type. Same thing here. You can have a default value here.
So Michael, that link, the link field in there, you can have that set. You can add multiple links in there. So if you wanted to have like 3 different contacts that you could link to, you can create as multiple.
Sure.
Okay, I have some work for you.
Okay. Yep. Now, just to be aware, it doesn't show up on their tab. So let's say you link it to Michael Cadlub. If you go to Michael Cadlub and then go to his insurance tab, it's not going to show up there. What it allows you to do, though, it's an easy look. It's basically, think of it as like a lookup field. It allows you to look it up instead of having to type in Michael Cadlub. You just type in his name because he's part of your database.
Yeah, so, no, but what I'm saying though is that I have one of the clients that I'm working with. They have a primary and a secondary contact that they work on with insurance reviews.
Oh, perfect.
So
yep.
they want to be able to go, I want to jump to that record, because before you had to physically go out and search for the next person.
Search for it.
So they want to be able to link it so that they can just click on it, go, oh, I know that Michael's on vacation, so I'm going to click on Jason's name and go to Jason today. So you got it. I was asked. Perfect. Yep. I'm going to have some more work for you. Thanks.
Good. So we have default value here and field length similar to the ACT ones. I think 256 is the most you can have for the field length. Default value, you can have something in there so that every time you create something, it defaults to that. Sequential field, this is great. So this is something new that Act itself doesn't have without an add-on. This will sort of, each time you create a new record, it'll just put a sequential item in there. Quote number or service, if it's a service thing, the service item number, things like that. And how we get around it for remote databases, because obviously those are syncing, aren't live. Within each remote database, you can set them up with their, like a prefix. So like, for example, maybe their initials. So mine would be MK0001. Amanda's AB0001, and so on, or their whole name, whatever. It could be whatever you want. And how you do that on a remote side is, on the remote database, if you have a field set up like this, on the remote side, under their custom tables menu, they're going to have an option for sequential setting. Okay, and then you would set their settings for that field in their remote database once they get it. Okay, so it's just something a little additional you have to do. If they do have a remote database, you would set the prefix and suffix there on each person's remote side. You don't set it here if each one's going to have a different prefix and or suffix. Okay.
Is this tied to the actual remote itself, or is it tied to a user profile?
To the remote database itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a global setting that you could override the individual RDBs?
This is the global setting here, and then once each RDB gets theirs, then you have the custom setting. So
Okay.
here, I'll show you on let me show you my screen. Oops. So here in my Act remote database here under custom tables, because it's a remote, I have this sequential field settings option. And then what it would do is, we don't have any sequential fields in our database, so that's why it's blank. But if I did have any sequential field settings, I would highlight whatever field it is here in this list, double click it, and then select how, enter my prefix and so on for my specific sequential field that I want. Okay. So basically you have to wait till they get the remote database and then go into their custom tables menu and go into here and set up their specific prefixes and suffixes for their remote database. So once again, typically their initials or their name prior to the number is going to be the way to go on that to keep things somewhat consistent. Okay, so let's go back to the other one. Okay, so I'm not going to have that checked for this. I just want to show you what that involves there. And then next we have the similar drop-down options that we have in the regular Act fields. Limit the list if you want to have multiple selects, enable type ahead, etc. Show descriptions. And then next, and create that field. Okay, and then let's create a couple more fields here based upon that tab. So where we're going to do renewal date, that's a date field. Group ID number. And we put in a request last week. I think I did. I think Jason might have liked it too. About the ability to create these fields outside of custom tables. Because this one here we're doing right now, there's only, I think 12 fields, so it's not that difficult or that time consuming. But there were some, like I did one this weekend that was, I think there was like 40 fields in it. So that can sort of get a little bit time consuming over the fact. So it would be great, similar to the add-on that Stan Smith has, where you can create multiple contact fields with an Excel spreadsheet. If we could do that with custom fields. So I'm going to get on Austin about that. All right, so this one's a currency field.
Bubs?
Yes.
Yeah. Would we run into difficulties trying to use this for inventory management?
Inventory management.
You can see where it would possibly fit, but what would the pitfalls be?
I guess you really would only put everything on one contact record, because if you have an inventory, it's going to be the same for everybody. So you would just have to create a contact record called inventory, I guess, or something that, if you want to put it on the My Record, whatever, and then all your data would be on that particular tab. So that would be the only, I wouldn't really call it a pitfall, but it's just a training thing to tell that people would need to know they have to go to that record to see, or the global list. They can just go to the global list, actually.
Because it has the potential to link to opportunities, wherein someone buys a product, and that ends up in something that would be like inventory tracking, as in this person has actually bought X number of products for us through these other opportunities. We would have that tracked in to their contact record if it links into this table. So it's not just a company's inventory, but what their clients have purchased from them gives you, that still also falls under inventory management.
Yeah, the only thing it doesn't do is, like, it wouldn't hide things that you would have to filter things out if it's already being used. Like if it's active or inactive, or however you want to label it, you'd have to make sure to check that box. It's not going to automatically remove it from inventory if somebody buys it. It's not like that kind of software.
That is a pitfall.
Yeah.
No, that's already what we do with the Act for Outlook inventory that Austin creates under KQC admin. You just go in and look at the inventory, you grab that, and you reassign it, and then it's in inventory. So if somebody has selling
so that's how you do it, right?
Yeah, so if somebody sells photocopiers and they lease it out for 5 years, they can just reassign it back into inventory once it comes back from a client. So we're doing that already with our software table and KQC admin and Act for Outlook.
Yep, that's what you'd have to do. Exactly. That's a great point, James. Yeah, so you have them, initially you have everything in inventory assigned to a record. Once again, you call it inventory, or if you want to do it to the My Record, the database, however you want to do it, that doesn't matter. You just have to know who it is. And then once somebody else buys that product, then you go in there and reassign it to that person or company, and now it's on their record. And then, as James said, if it sort of comes back, then you reassign it back to the original My Record. So it's just it's more of a training issue than anything, to make sure that the people are doing that correctly and making sure they're reassigning things.
So then
definitely doable.
How well will this link to opportunities?
How well would it link? Well, I mean, you could link it to it, just like it links to a contact. You would just link it to a particular opportunity if you wanted to.
So if someone buys or puts a product into an opportunity, would that correspond to, or can we get that to correspond to, a piece of inventory?
Sure, it can. Yeah. So on the there'd be a tab called products, or whatever you want to call it, in opportunities, and then that product would be listed there as long as you linked it to that opportunity.
Okay.
But to the question that you're asking, Amanda, if somebody were to go into opportunities, create a quote, put them all in the products, and say the quote get accepted, there's no way currently, at least as far as I know, for that to automatically go and do what you're wanting it to do. It would be very, very, very manual, right? They would have to go to the company record and associate that product with that opportunity.
Right.
Okay, but manual is not exactly the worst thing in the world.
Depends on how much their work they're doing.
What they want to do. Yeah, so
Right.
definitely doable. And we'll, we're almost done here for today. Next week we're going to go on the layouts, and once we do the layouts and have everything in the database, we'll show you guys how to do the links and unlink and reassign and things like that. So, like I said, we're done as far as the data manipulation today. So does anybody have any questions?
You might want to consider another vertical then.
Consider another vertical. For what?
Consider another, inventory for ACT.
Oh, another product you're talking about.
Yeah. So the same way we have ACT for Wealth or something like that, an inventory version of it. Because that is a whole market out there that this ties into, and a lot of CRM products have that issue. There is no component that lets you reliably include inventory, which leaves clients who have inventory needing to run two major products.
Good point. I say we get videos on the products we have now first, and then we can move on to different products. That's just my opinion, though, because we have no documentation on most of our products as it is. But yeah, that would be a great idea. Okay. So once again, just to sort of recap what we did today. So we talked about what's the best, or if you're talking to a customer, sort of what's the best way to determine whether or not they they need custom tables. Number one, if they're in the insurance industry, I mean, they're almost guaranteed there. I can almost if you're working with an insurance, you really don't even need to look at their database, because all insurance people, they track renewals. Okay, they track multiple insurances. Nobody's out there that just has one insurance. Okay, so insurance companies are I think one of the big targets of custom tables, because it lends so well, and that's why I actually did this one today for that. Any kind of service industry. Okay, and it doesn't really matter what service. We provide computer consulting service. Clients provide. We showed you the radon service. Any kind of appliance repair service. Basically any kind of service industry. And to bring it down into a couple words, as James said, basically any clients of yours that provide a service, a maintenance or are entering data for a client repetitively. So more than once for any clients, if they're entering that data multiple times, they're going to be a candidate for Tables4Act, no matter what it is. It doesn't really matter the industry. So people always ask, what industries do it? Obviously, insurance and service industries are two big ones, but basically almost any industry that, like what James said, that you do things multiple times is going to be a great industry for the Tables4Act. Because what it is a one-to-many relationship, one contact that has many relationships, whether it be to service, to insurance, to visits, to quotes, what have you. That's where it's going to come into play.
Anybody who sells a product too, like warranties as well, like because we have Opticon there, Michael, that they don't track. They're going to start tracking warranties when they get a chance, because now they can upsell a warranty, 60 days before it expires for their equipment.
Right. Yep. Warranties are a great option as well. Jason, you asked me to make you presenter. You still want that?
No, that was an accident. I hit the
no problem.
TV screen instead of the microphone.
Okay, no problem at all. One thing actually before I leave you guys here, I wanted to talk about cascading drop downs here. So let's go into there. So this is an option for that's not available in ACT itself without a add-on, the default ACT defined fields. This allows you to say, okay, if for example, in this type, let's add a cascade. Let me just show you. I guess it might be easier to show you. So if I add the type field, there's only two drop downs here. Let me change this here. Let me add something. I forgot to add carrier, didn't I? Nice. Let's do that. No, I forgot a field. Okay, there's a couple carriers. Okay, come on, field. There we go. Okay, so let's go back to cascading dropdowns. So when we choose the type of insurance, okay, so it'll be medical, life, dental, or vision. Maybe for the carrier, because each carrier might only carry certain types of insurance. So for the type, we want the carrier field. Once we select the type, we only want the carriers that are available for that particular type of insurance. So for dental, it's only going to be either Aflac or Anthem. For life, Blue Cross, Geico. Medical does Anthem, Blue Cross, and Medical Mutual. And vision, maybe those three. Okay, or you could display all values. Okay, so what's going to happen is when we go to that drop down and choose vision, then when we go to the current carrier, it's only going to show these 3 ones that are checked on that drop down. Okay, now for this one that we're showing here, because there's only 5 items in the drop down, it's not a huge deal. But for some people who have like 1,000 items in their drop down, to segment that out is huge for them. Okay, so this is a huge value for those type of people who have a lot of drop downs, but they're based upon other drop down fields. And once you select one of the drop down items, it narrows that other drop down to specific items. That's what cascading drop downs will allow you to do. Okay, we'll see that actually in action next week once we actually create the layouts and everything. So I wanted to make sure we got that in by next week. Okay. Any other questions on today as far as, once again, industries that need it, creating the table and or creating the fields within custom tables? All good. Okay. Sales team, any questions? Support team, any questions?
Can the cascading drop downs do more than 2 drop downs? So if you had
no,
you just 1-to-1.
Yeah. So give me an example, James.
If you have the product type that goes along with the carrier, once you hit that option. So if you do type, current carrier, and product type, can it go down to the point where if I choose the type as medical and then I get my 2 carriers, it's only going to list me 4 options in the
next drop down?
In the next drop down. So you would associate a current carrier table to the different product types.
Yeah, so you need to do carrier and then to whatever that we only have 2 years, so obviously there's not another option.
Can it do that? Because I thought at one point I remember it wasn't an option to go beyond just 1-to-1.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why it wouldn't, because it's just a drop down you're saying here. So if current carrier was Geico, for example, then the product type would only show 4 products or whatever.
Exactly. Because you could have a list of 40 different. Yeah, so that might be just something to test out, because I know that would be
okay.
Because I had that with a lumber company where they had different products that they were selling, different sizes of the lumber, and different finishes. So they wanted to be able to narrow it down across the 3-4 different drop downs.
Sure.
And I couldn't get it to work in previous versions. I haven't revisited it, so I wasn't sure if that's been fixed or changed.
Okay. All right, I'll take a look at that.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Anything else? All right. If anybody does have any questions after this, that forgot to ask, just shoot me a Slack or whatever, and we can get to those. But otherwise, we're going to have another one once again next 2 more actually, each of the following next 2 Tuesdays. So next Tuesday, we'll focus on creating the layout and doing some test data entry and test importing of data if we have time for that. If not, we'll follow that up with in the following week. All right. So everybody have a good day, and let's get out there and try to push this as much as we can. Okay.
Thanks, Libs.
everybody.
Bye.